corpus delicti is a Latin term that means the body of a crime. It's the proof that a crime has been committed, which is necessary before finding out who committed the crime. And crimes certainly don't all look the same.
Corpus Delicti is also a true crime podcast that takes a series approach into various ways crimes are committed. Cruise ship deaths, historical crimes, and women who kill are just a few of the themes we have covered cases on. We even dive deep into the case of a likely innocent man on death row in our home state of Alabama.
We're coming up on 200 episodes soon, so there's plenty to binge. Join us every week wherever you get your podcasts as we dive into a new case within our current series.
That's CORPUSDELICTI. Hope to see you soon.
You're listening to Sirens, a true crime podcast, brought to you by the Sirens Network. This podcast contains explicit content, so listener discretion is advised. The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely the views of the hosts and do not reflect the views of affiliates, associates, or sponsors of this podcast. This is Sirens, a true crime podcast.
There are rumors and witnesses that claimed that they saw the girls at a New Year's Eve party the day after they were abducted. There are also witnesses that claim that they have seen photos of the girls. Some say that they were Polaroids. Some say they were just regular photos of the girls tied up and beat up.
Tied and bound.
Gagged. And, but the problem is that the police have never seen them. They've never surfaced.
Because a lot of people moved out of Pitcher, but their homes were still here vacant.
Yeah.
And that's when a lot of the drug people would come in and squatters' rights. Mm-hmm. Do their little drugs for 4 or 5 days, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they'd go. The people that were picked up in Ottawa County for drug charges after the girls disappeared for the next year, they'd come in there and they'd ask them, do you know anything about the Bible Freeman case? And they would say, oh, those 2 missing girls from Welch? Well, then they would tell them that the girls were took, and there was tons of people that would tell them. They were took to a New Year's Eve party where they were raped, sodomized, abused, drugged. A lot of them you can't find somebody that will actually admit it because they're more afraid of those people.
Right.
But there was enough different people that said, yeah, I heard this. That's how we end up at Wyandotte.
Okay.
There were at Twin Bridges and then over there on the Glover property. That's how we ended up there. Many people said they saw them, could tell the law enforcement what was on there. Girls were tied up to a bed, the girls were tied up in chairs.
Did anybody ever identify specifically Laura or?
Said it was the girls.
Okay.
Probably tossed somewhere, burned somewhere.
They know that the girls were being held hostage in a home in Pitcher for at least a week after they went missing. Where they were tortured, where they were sexually assaulted, and where they were murdered. No evidence has ever surfaced from that.
A lot of it's been people in and out and girlfriends of the suspects.
And people who use drugs, run drugs, do drugs down in that area because the home that they are claiming all of this happened in, it was a home owned by a certain man named Phil Welch, and it was a known drug house. So,
and I will let you know that the memorial sits on top of where that
home was. Yeah,
in Pitcher.
It was very strange. Like Lorene, literally, like we're sitting there, and there's this beautiful memorial that she has erected. And she didn't put it right on top of it. It's sitting right off of it.
But it's on the...
Yeah, it's on the property. It's right next to it. And she's literally like, well, here's where the
And there's lines showing
here's where the bedroom was.
From the water lines that were marked.
Yeah.
I think she did it because she's trying to say, look, we know where you took them. Look, we know. Like, you're not fooling us.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the beginning of where Phil Welch starts to be implicated. Because it was his home. This was like where they went to do drugs and make drugs and sell drugs. It was like he had this big drug.
They said he made methamphetamine.
Yeah, they were making meth out of there, and all sorts of other stuff. And because this is where Phil Welch begins to be implicated, it's where the other two men begin to be implicated as well, because these other two men are apparently Phil's right and left hand.
By that time, Steve Nutter had retired. Tammy Ferrari took over the OSBI in this area. And then Gary Standard was, he was an investigator in the Tulsa County Detectives for many years. And he retired out of the Tulsa County and took up a job for the DA in Rogers, Mays, and Craig County, that he's advocate for people that have been raped, molested, abused, and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he looked in the case for years with him and his buddy saying, how in the hell can this case be like that? So when he come over there, he had asked his boss, hey, can I look into this case on my own? They said, as long as it doesn't interfere with yours, yeah. So he'd started talking, looking for people, and there's still somebody out there that people are still scared to talk.
Yeah.
I said, there's people that know something, but whoever, I said at the beginning it was called the Chatopa Five. Well, three of them would have been Philip Welch, David Pennington, Ronnie Busick, which I think Ronnie was down at the end. He wasn't a hard one. But I said, there's still two others in that ring that know something.
Yeah.
But people are more scared of them than they are me or the police, because they do cruel things.
Yeah. They're beyond the law.
They come to your house in the middle of the night and slit your throat. They don't think nothing about it. I'm not coming to slit your throat.
Yeah.
I just want information that you might know.
A break in the case, and this was way. This is after the fact. Because right after the investigation, Lorene kind of knew that she wasn't going to get anywhere with police, and they ended up hiring a private investigator named Tom Pryor. And Tom went out to the house where this happened and was searching the property, and he found an insurance verification card that should not have been there. And it was just
in the driveway.
It was just laying in the driveway. Laying in the front yard, basically. It should in no way have been there. Within days, it was tracked to a woman who was living with Phil Welch at the time. So her name was on this insurance verification card. Now, it was known that Phil would frequently take and drive her car.
And she said that her insurance was on her glove box.
Exactly. If that's true, why would that insurance card be in their driveway just days after this happened? And unrelated witnesses claim to have seen these girls in his home just days after this happened. I mean, I know that it at this point is circumstantial. It's pretty good circumstances.
I mean, you take that being found in the driveway, if it doesn't put him at the scene of the crime, it puts him at that house sometime around there. So he was there at some point, and it would be really easy for something like that to fall out of a glove compartment. If you were pulling out, say, a gun,
yes,
or you were pulling something out of that glove compartment, it might have just flown out the door.
Yeah, exactly. And so Pryor looked into this further, and he actually found this car at a salvage lot with females' clothing in it. Now, I know that it was owned by a woman, but it also had a rental receipt in it for a mobile home that Welch was currently living in. Not the home in picture, but the one he was currently living in. So I mean, not only do you know that they were dating, but you know that he was at least in the vehicle at the time, at some point, because he has his receipts in there.
And someone was at that house.
Yes. He told investigators when he found this card, he told them about it and said that it needs to be put into evidence, and it wasn't. Just plain and simple. It wasn't. He said he kept the card. He himself kept the card as evidence for almost 2 decades. Finally, a man named Gary Stansel, who was an investigator with the District 12 DA's office, and Tammy Ferrari, an agent with the OSBI. These investigators later alleged that Welch and 2 associates, the right and left hand that we were talking about, David Pennington and Ronnie Busick, were actually the murderers, and had all 3 been there that night. And Lorene actually thinks that there was a 4th man there as well, which I think there's a good chance that it was Jeremy Jones. But that's just
that
my
is hearsay.
take on it.
That is
It
hearsay,
is,
but
that's our conjecture.
but I think it's a good possibility.
And then these other 3 men, of course, you have Phil, who is the head honcho.
Yes.
You've got Ronnie and
David Pennington,
David.
who they said was really good with methamphetamine, from what I read. Was very good with making
cooking.
Making methamphetamines.
A good cooker. And then, you had Ronnie, who apparently was the thief of them, that would, he was like the one who would break into places
and enters the arrowheads.
And yes, and so you have one man who a lot of people have claimed were terrified of Phil, that they have no doubt that he could absolutely take a life. They were afraid of him, and they even claimed that Ronnie and David were afraid of him.
He threatened a lot of people.
Yes, he threatened a lot of people.
His girlfriends had said that he threatened their life.
Absolutely. And so you have one man who's not afraid to take a life.
If I'd have found the person that did this, I probably could have shot him dead. And not thought twice about it. Mm-hmm. Then I thought, then I'm no better than they are. I mean, that part of your body finally takes over and tells you, if you become a killer like they are, then you're no better than they are.
Now, here's an offbeat theory of mine. Because there's a lot of stuff that goes into Danny being involved with drugs.
Yes.
And if you want to know more about that, you can read Hell in the Heartland, because Jack's covered that.
Goes into depth.
So deep.
Yes.
And so my theory is, if Danny got into selling or whatever because he needed this $5,000, he needed to make some cash, he needed to make it quick.
So he could put the lawsuit against the county.
Now, he's already, into weed selling and stuff like that, so he kind of knows the circle of people you need to get in with in order to make some real money. So let's say he contacts Phil and he says, I want to sell for you. Well, what if he sells and he never hands over that money because he needs it? He needs it, in order to file this wrongful death lawsuit. Well, Phil's going to come and collect. He's going to come and get that money. He's going to come and get what he's owed. He's going to bring his right-hand men, and he's going to bring a getaway driver.
Well, and Jeremy Jones would have been already known because he would have been the one that was supposed to meet with Danny Freeman.
Exactly. He's the one that was supposed to do the initial meetup. And so, we already know that there's a connection between Jeremy Jones and Danny in some way. We already know that there's a connection just from the area between
all of them.
Yes. And so it's not too far-fetched to say, if Lorene is correct, that there were 4 men there that night. What could have happened was these 4 men went to collect. They did not know, and they were not aware that the girls were there that night.
Because if you think about it, Danny Freeman would have never had the girls, especially his daughter with him, to do any of this. It would have been somewhere out.
Right. And of course, the trailer was burned down, so we don't know if they broke in the house.
Yes.
We don't know, if they kicked in the door with guns.
Knocked and he let him in because he thought it was just...
Exactly.
Who knows?
The evidence of where the bodies were found, where Kathy and Danny were found, suggests that they did not know that someone was in the home.
Yes.
Until it was too late.
That's true.
And so what I believe happened was these men showed up. They kicked in the door. They got in the door somehow. And they were, at least Phil was already packing. He had a shotgun and he went in there to threaten Danny to get his money. I feel like when Danny said, I don't have your money or whatever, something got out of hand and Phil shot him. I feel like Kathy decided at that point it was time to get away. She turned around and was shot. While that's happening, he's the lead man. Maybe he's barking orders. Ronnie, take whatever you can get. Take whatever you think is of value. He grabs the arrowheads. Maybe he tells David, set this place on fire. Burn it to the ground. And he's the one that is out, putting it down the accelerant. And maybe at that point is when the girls, because Lorene seems to think that they went out the back.
There was a back door.
There was a back door. And there's a good chance that the girls snuck out the back door.
That would explain why Laura's purse was still there untouched, because they never went back there.
They never went back there. And there's also a good chance that, one of them, while looking for, valuables or whatever, spooked them and saw them run out the back, because we do know that around in that area is where they were kidnapped.
Yes.
Because back there, there's a bunch of tall grass and stuff like that. And the dog was home that night. Sissy was home, and the dog followed them out the back. And I think Sissy might have been the reason why they
brought some attention to them.
Brought some attention to them. But at some point, they realized that the girls were there and that they went out the back door. If there are 4 men there, even if there are 3 men there, that's enough. That's enough to take 2 girls.
There's really nowhere, just being there, there's nowhere for those girls to have ran to.
No.
It's not like they could have ran next door and gotten help.
There was no next door.
There was no next door.
Yeah.
I mean...
They would have had to run for, I think we calculated that the closest neighbor was at least 2 miles away.
They would have had to run for a really long time and then take the chance of hiding at night in the middle of the night.
Yeah, or they could have disappeared in the back. Where it seems like they were going to was to try to disappear in the forest back there. But again, it's nighttime and it's very, very thick forest.
And these are 2 young
teenagers. 16-year-old girls.
So you have to remember, they're probably scared.
Yeah.
They're probably not really coordinated. Mm-hmm. When you're really scared like that, your coordination is not the best. And that's why you see people fall in movies and things, because their coordination is off because of their fight or flight.
Well, and we do know that, at least we think we know that they weren't murdered anywhere on the premises, that they were captured, because there was no evidence of blood or anything like that on the premises. So we do think that, whoever did this was alerted, that they had run out the back, that they were trying to hide in the field back there, that they went out there and they captured them. 4 grown men, even 3 grown men, even 2 grown men could definitely capture 2 16-year-old girls.
Yes.
And I think that that's precisely what happened, that they drug them back to the car. Maybe that's when that, insurance card falls out of the car. They load them up and they haul them off. Now, what happened to them after that, I don't know. They were seen at Phil's home. There were pictures taken of them where they were bound and gagged and tortured, and it's believed that they were kept there for at least a week after their kidnapping.
Awful. So awful.
Of course, we don't know that for sure.
But just to think about that's just very awful.
There were tips that came in to all over, even to Lorene, where people had said that, they were thrown down the mines. They were kept and held in storm cellars in Pitcher, that they were in the cellar in that home, in Phil's home, when they demolished the home. And there's a lot of different things that people, have said.
Too, and we had a search Friday.
Yeah,
I was telling you. What day was? No, Thursday.
I know.
I don't even know what today is.
Today is Monday. Yeah.
Yeah. And my husband doesn't go ever. He asked me the other day, he's like, do you want me to come out? And I've told him, like, you're always welcome to come, but I'm not going to ask you to come out there.
Yeah.
And he always says, well, I feel like I should just stay away because that's, kind of, but it's been that way for almost 23 years. Mm-hmm. And if there's been something going on, or if Lorene calls and says, hey, I've got somebody that wants to meet us, her and I go. We've done some pretty dumb things. Well, and so many times we don't think. If somebody says, I've got some information, I want you to meet me.
You just won't go.
We just go.
Get it.
Yeah.
But if she calls and says, hey, I'm like, let's go. And we do it.
That's right out.
If it hadn't been raining so much, we'd been right over there last month digging again. Because they found a cellar over there on a piece of property. We were going to do it, but the digger we were using broke.
Oh.
And they said, oh, there's nothing here. Well, now they found out there is a cellar over there. So it just as people come forward saying you need to go here, we go do it.
Okay. One by one.
I have a nephew, and one of the girls is Sheena, Laura's best friend, one of her best friends. Her husband has equipment, and between my nephew and him, they pull in equipment as well as the last big dig we did. They pulled both their equipment in here and the Quapaw Indians.
Oh, that's good.
Because we dug up probably 3 lots.
When we got Gary and Tammy on board, that's when things started changing.
In one day. So how do you know? I say you just know people that know people that know people.
Yeah.
And that's nowadays when kids are, we've kept it out enough. People say, well, I used to live where my grandparents lived there. This is where they lived.
Yeah.
I remember this, I remember that, and they give us the location. We give it to Tammy and to Gary, and we talk to Ed, and is this viable piece of information? Could we, go look and see, is this really here? Could that have happened back in the day?
Yeah.
For months, years, without knowing anything. And then in 2015, one of my niece's friends, Lisa, by then her husband was a web designer when that social media platform come up.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, why don't we build you guys a web page for Laura? We said, we have not the first thing. He said, I'll help design it. I'll get you up and running. So that's in December. Immediately everybody was using Facebook, and it was another avenue.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the story of these missing kids, where in 15 years, the people of the drug people's kids that was 15, 12, 10, 9.
They were now grown.
They were grown with children, and they were like, oh, shit. And that's how we started, hey, you need to go look in Chitopa.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. I mean, it was at that point was when a friend of mine said, why do you not have a Facebook page started? Why are you not using social media? And I'm like, duh, I don't know. We had done things.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it.
You weren't born into the social media age.
No. And so when she said that, I'm like, well, yeah, we should probably do that.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that's when a lot of doors started opening, because then people had a way to talk to us.
Yes. Yeah.
Without having to talk to law enforcement, which was good and bad. You have to take the bad with the good.
Yeah.
And it's daily. I mean, it's daily still.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a situation a couple of years ago. This crazy lady called, and we had dealt with her once before. She said she was a psychic. She wanted to put Lorene to sleep. It was the weirdest thing. And so we agreed. We went over, and we're going in this house, and it's all dark with some candles. And so she's like trying to, what's the word? Hypnotize Lorene. So Lorene's laying on this couch, and she wants me to record it. And I'm like, oh God, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And so Lorene's just like, yeah, And then we left. I'm like, she really put you to sleep? She's like, hell no.
I was going to say, I don't think Lorene
funny.
is capable of being hypnotized.
No, but then the lady's like, okay, well, it didn't work on her, so let's do it with you. And I'm like, we have to go. I have things to do. And so, I mean, like, honestly, I put her number in my phone as, like, the crazy lady. Mm-hmm. And then, so she calls one day and says she's freaking out. She's found these bones. She's over in Pitcher. And she needs us to come right away. She said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And Lorene's like, don't do anything. Don't call anybody else.
Don't touch anything.
Just, we were on our way. So she calls me. Lorene's in Claremore. She's like, crazy ladies, found bones, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, let's go. Like, I was in the middle of cooking Sunday afternoon, lunch. I'm like, it'll be done by the time you get here. Let's go. So we get over there. Well, as we're pulling into Pitcher, I think it was Channel 7 News calls Lorene or whatever. And she looks at me like, you've got to be.
No.
So she answers the phone. The lady didn't call authorities. She called all the news stations around here and told them that she'd found the girls' bodies.
Oh my gosh.
Lorene was so mad. So she's telling, like, fortunately, we know all the news media around here. And so she's like, no, this woman is crazy. She did not find any. We will call you back if there is anything. The lady that we're going to meet. And she's like, Lorene's like, why did you call the news station? Well, I didn't know what to do. Lorene said, I told you not to do anything until we got here. Mm-hmm. Why would you call the news station? She was looking for her 5 minutes of fame.
Yes.
So anyway, we're walking through the chat piles and Pitcher. And then finally, I did have my gun in my back pants.
Good.
And then I thought, maybe I should drop a pin.
Yeah.
And so I texted my husband and dropped a pin, and I'm like, here's where we are, because the cell phone reception's not great.
Yeah.
I'm like, here's where we are in case, something should happen. You at least have a starting point. And he's like, oh, Lord, what's going on? I'm like, we literally walked over a chat pile, around a chat. We walked like a mile and a half, and she's like, oh, gosh, I don't remember where I saw them. And I'm like, you didn't put markers out? And finally, we found them. I walk up, and I'm looking at this vertebrae that's perfectly laid out on top of the ground. And my first thought was, is she even for real right now? Like, look how big that is.
Was it fake or was it
No, it
an
was
animal?
real, but it was a cow.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm like, and so I looked at her and I'm like, this is what you brought us out here for. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, did you find it like that? And she's like, well, no, I put the pieces together. And I'm like, so you touched it, first of all?
Oh, my gosh.
Well, I had my gloves on, and she has those little, winter purple fuzzy gloves.
Oh, yeah, let's leave fuzz all over
and
it.
I'm like, crazy. And and that one's mild.
Wow.
That's mild. And I had one call me, thank goodness they didn't call Lorene, but it was just as hard for me. Called me and told me that she had watched them be murdered, and that she watched them hang them in the trees and skin them like deer. We've heard it all. We have literally heard it all. And that's the things that don't let you sleep at night. But how messed up do you have to be to call family of somebody who's missing a loved one and say, yeah, I watched them be murdered and I saw them being skinned. And anytime we have a search, or anytime there's something on TV or a new podcast, for the next few days, my Facebook Messenger will blow up because somebody knows something. And then you won't hear anything for a while. And it's not anybody that knows anything. It hasn't been. Someday there could be. Yeah. And that's our hope. That's why we keep doing what we do, because we do want that person to come forward. But you got to weed through it. And I think that people forget that we're real people.
Yes.
This is a story. It's a story, but it's our life. It's real. And there's so much false. So it's very hurtful. And I don't think people think about that when they think whatever they think that makes them think, well, I'm just going to call somebody and tell them that their girls' bodies were put in a wood chipper and they're covered in...
I can't imagine that.
They're covered out on Highway 69 in, asphalt.
Think before you message.
I don't think people think before they tell it. I think that they think, oh, I just want 5 minutes of fame. They don't realize that we're real people, and the way we have to process the cruel and unusual things that you just told us, it's hard.
Well, and you know what? If you do have a real legitimate lead, there is a delicate way to present that information.
Yeah.
Because you have to think about it like, if this were my mother, my daughter, my sister, my child? How would I want this information to come to me? Would I want someone to say wood chipper to me? Or do you think that is something that, you know, if we thought it was a real lead, we'll leave that for, you know, the detectives or,
For whatever reason, lately, the tips that we keep getting, and I know it's been out there before because it's not new information, but all of a sudden it's the surge of people wanting to tell us that they've been put in barrels covered in concrete, thrown in rivers.
Where are they getting that?
That was something that was told way back, that they were put in barrels and thrown off twin bridges.
Probably before there was more information.
It's been read. And so those are the things that all of a sudden, for whatever reason, we have this whole bunch of people who wants to tell us the same thing. I know where they're at. I know, and people get angry when we don't listen and say, I've told you, and why won't you answer me, or why won't you? And the thing that I think people don't realize is we have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of tips and information. So it's not that the information isn't taken serious, and it's not that we don't write everything down. We do. But then we go back and go through everything to see if we can make a connection. Does it even make sense with everything that we know to be factual? You know, even after a dig like we had last week, in our private messenger, I probably had 20 people just send a private message that said, we're thinking of you today, or, you know, and we appreciate every one of those. It's so good. And we do read those, but I don't have time to respond to all of those. Lorene doesn't have time to respond to all of those, while we're also picking through, hey, we know that they've been put in a barrel and, you know, put what, or they've been put in a freezer and put, you know, all the different things.
Very overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean,
very overwhelming.
And it's complex. And I think that if there was one thing that I would want people to take from this, it's that everything is taken serious, but it's so complex that just because you think you have the right answer, this puzzle is so big and there are so many pieces. Could you have the piece? Maybe, but we have to figure out how that piece would fit this puzzle before we can even dig into it. And we have so many people that says, well, you guys aren't taking it serious, or law enforcement isn't taking it serious. I'm going to go dig up this place myself. I told you this is where they're buried. I'm going to go dig it up myself. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You know, if that's how it worked, we would have already dug up the entire town of Pitcher by now.
For sure.
It's just not that easy. And especially after this dig at Pitcher again last week, there were so many messages of, let's just have civilians meet and start digging. No, it's
such a dangerous place.
It's so dangerous. And the thing is that people that say that, their intentions are in the right place. Because they're frustrated with us.
They want to help. But
their intentions are good. It just isn't that simple.
Yeah. There are 14,000 mines under Pitcher that spans miles and miles and miles and miles. All the way, to Joplin, Missouri. And so if you get taken down there and left down there, even if you're not killed, even if you're just taken down there and left without a light, without a know of where this mine is going, you could easily go in the wrong direction.
Oh, easily get turned around.
And I want to say, this is the thing about the mines that I did not know when I did the Pitcher episode. I did not know until we got out there, and I did not know until we spoke to Lorene. So, she was telling us that she had got with... It wasn't the tribe. It's whoever's over the town of Pitcher now.
Oh, the Geological Association?
They had all of those maps.
I think it's the Geological Association.
Where she got a hold of some maps that shows where open mines are. Like open mine shafts. The ones that haven't, collapsed or been blocked off or whatever. And there are still, she said, over 100 of them that are open. And I don't mean like a hole in the ground, like that you could barely fit through. I'm talking, she was explaining to us that it was like, no, these were for dump trucks.
You can drive in there.
That would drive down in there and load up chat and take it and haul it out. And it was miles and miles and miles that you could do this with. And so these are big open holes that you can just walk down in and get totally lost in. And so, saying that they could be anywhere in those mines. There are 14,000 of those. There are still hundreds of them open from, as far as they span. And they're just in people's backyards. They're just, they're all over the place.
They're huge.
And she's digging. She's digging everywhere she can dig. She has this map. She said that she's just going to them one by one. And she's still looking after all of these years. She's still looking in cellars. She's still anywhere in picture that she can get her hands on. She's looking in. And I cannot imagine looking for my child for 2 decades.
In a mine.
And still going as if it happened yesterday.
She is one of the most strongest, most fearless women I've ever met. And just listening to her speak about her child and her child's best friend, it literally just almost hypnotizes you, because you almost get drawn into her despair and her strength at the same time. I don't even know how to explain that. Strength and despair, but it is almost at the same time. And you get so drawn in that you just don't even want to speak, because you want to hear what she has to say. And it's almost like you feel what she's feeling. And I know it would be impossible to feel what a parent felt to lose their child, but it's almost like you're transformed into that moment with her.
It's especially like that when you're sitting knee to knee with her.
Yes. And it's just, I have no idea, what they've went through all these years, and what, because they are the advocate for Ashley too. Because Ashley's parents and brother are gone.
Yeah, they're gone. Yeah.
And so it is amazing to me how, you can be all these years later just as strong, but as...
She's fierce.
Oh, man. Yes.
She's probably the most fearless, fierce woman that I've ever met.
Oh.
Like she says, they have this Facebook group now. You can go and keep up with their updates, but it's called Find Lorene Bible BBI. And
please go join it.
She'll tell you BBI is the Bible Bureau of Investigation, because she had to take on that role herself, and she's never stopped.
No.
And she goes and goes and goes. She's fearless. The things that she's done, the story that she told us,
things
which
you can never imagine,
which she talks about meeting the drug dealer with the drug cartel, and they're into human trafficking and all of this stuff. And she's just like, he asked her, he's like, why would you want to meet me back here on this back road? And she's like, well, what do I have to lose?
I have nothing to lose.
Yeah. She's just absolutely fearless.
No, I met with a guy by the name of Blue Eyes from from Commerce. Because that's the sign he used. And he met me one night. We met on the dark roads over here in the middle of nowhere. And he said, why would you come meet with me? I said, you know what? I'll meet with the devil himself. You got something you want me to know? I'm here to find that out. When I'm done, you go back your way and I'll go back my way. That's all this is. And he told me, he said, ma'am, when somebody owes me money, I don't take it out on no wife and still not on no children. If somebody owes me money, I take it up with the man himself or the woman himself. I deal with them one-on-one. I don't interfere with their children, their families. He said, I don't. So I'm telling you, we didn't. He said, what do you think's happened? I said, well, I've heard it could be your cartel or any of the people associated in any of them that are joined yours.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, I've heard that maybe they were sold to trafficking. They were somewhere in Mexico. And he said, I tell you what, I can look in Mexico for you. He said, where do you work? Well, by that time, I had left Bonita and I was working in Catoosa. And he said, one of these days, somebody's going to show up and ask for you. And he'll tell you what I found out. He'll just ask for you, and that's what he'll tell you. So it was probably 2000. 2007, and somebody yelled at me, "Hey, Lorene, there's some guy here that wants to talk to you." And I walked up there, and it was a little Hispanic dude. He said, "You Miss Bible?" And I said, "Yes, I am." "You got a daughter with a mole on her face?" And I said, "Yes, she does." And he said, "She not in Mexico nowhere. The dirty blonde girl, she not there neither. We looked, she not nowhere in Mexico.
Wow.
She not in Mexico nowhere." I said, "Well, thank you for your time. Tell your boss I said thank you." And he disappeared just the same as he showed up.
Wow.
But he told me, he said, "Aren't you scared?" And I said, "Well, I figure that if somebody starts shooting at me, I must be getting close."
Like, I don't think you know what you would do for your child until you have to do it. And she is absolutely the epitome of that statement.
I know. I have nothing but just complete, just in awe of her and what she's been through and what the family's been through.
Even through some health problems.
I know.
She's like, even when we were sitting out there, she was like, "Oh yeah, we just dug over there last weekend and we're going to dig over there next weekend." I was like, it is 104 degrees out here.
It was hot.
And I know you have some health issues and you should not be out here right now.
But she acted like it was nothing.
Like no bother.
Because
to
her mind is on finding her child.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's absolutely insane, this journey that she's been on. And I could only hope that those girls are found.
I know.
But people ask, "How did you get all the media?" I said, "Well, I have to go give John Walsh credit for that."
John Walsh.
I said, "He called on the third day."
Oh, really? That soon?
Well, I have a friend in Veneta that's friends with the lady that is John Walsh's ex-wife's best friend.
Okay.
So Jennifer called her and said, "Man, you're not going to believe this. This just happened in Craig County. 2 missing 16-year-old girls disappeared off the face of the earth, and they have no clue where they're at." So she called John's wife, told her. Well, she called John because even though they're divorced, they're still real good friends because they have other children together, and they learned after their son disappeared.
Was she Adam's mom?
Yes.
Okay.
And she's Tanner's mom too.
Okay. Nice.
She called and told him, she said, "These 2 16-year-old girls have just disappeared." And this is the number that Jennifer had given her friend that told her. So he called and he said, "This is John Walsh with America's Most Wanted." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, what I'm going to do," this was like on a Wednesday, and America's Most Wanted was on Friday nights. He said, "What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull from the news station which one has the best coverage of that day."
Oh, man.
So Channel 7 out of Pittsburgh, Kansas does. He said, I said, "They were the first one on the scene. They'll have all the ones with the fire and all that." Channel 16 and 12 out of Joplin was there. 2, 6, and 8 out of Tulsa was there. But Channel 7 was the footage that was gotten right away.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Okay." He said, "Well, I'll do that. I'll have a little more on the second week. The third week, my people will be there. They will have recorded. And on the third week, 3 weeks from now, it'll be on America's Most Wanted, a 20-minute segment." He said, my ex-wife, actually, and I went through this. I said, "Yeah, with Adam." He said, "Right now, you and your husband do not blame each other.
Yeah.
Do not point the finger. If you'd have done this, if I'd have done this," he said, "it's nobody's fault. Bad things happen to good people."
Yeah.
He said, "Nobody told us when Adam disappeared. We were too much about, if you'd have done this, well, if you'd have been on time, if you'd have done this."
Mm-hmm.
I would have been in a store where he went and hid in the clothes and somebody took him. He said that animosity come between us, and over the years we finally divorced because it was just too big of a gap.
Yeah.
He said, "I'm telling you, it's nobody's fault." He said, "But you, as a mom, you need to decide." I said, "Decide what?" He said, "You need to decide if you're going to go hide in a closet and lock yourself in it, and not come out? Let it consume you, or are you going to be your daughter's voice? I said, well, I don't hide from anything. I'm not made that way. So I guess I'll be her voice. He said, then you need to be her voice. You need to talk to anybody, everybody you can, and then some. He said, let's hope in 5 years we find out what happened to the girls. Hope 10 years we're not here. But he said, I need you to be her voice.
Did anybody ever ask you or approach you after this, asking you if you need services?
To this day, no one has ever.
That is
Yeah.
wrong on so many levels, and that should have been one of the first things that
On your worst day, something that has happened to you, you should not have to track these things down on your own, or even have to think about it. There should be someone there to go, let me help you.
I don't even know that that's a thought that we had.
see.
Yeah.
You
shouldn't have to.
You shouldn't have to.
It should just be someone that comes to you and says, "Look, I'm here. I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to support," because they're supposed to be there to support you.
And do you know, oddly, in 23 years, you're the first person to ever even ask. All these years, did anyone try to give you guys any sort of emotional or psychological help? We've never even been asked that question before. So you're the first to ever ask that in 23 years.
That's just, to me, it's just...
Which we're not quite to 23, but we're almost there.
But, I mean, to me, that is just...
It's unacceptable.
That's sad, isn't it?
On April 23rd, 2018, Craig County District Attorney Investigator Gary Stansel and Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Tammy Ferrari filed a 29-page affidavit arrest warrant for 66-year-old Ronnie Dean Busick on 4 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and 1 count of first-degree arson. Stansel began investigating the case in September 2011. However, it was not believed Busick acted alone. Phil Welch, David Pennington, and Ronnie Busick were known to be part of the, quote, Chautauqua Five out of Kansas. So, who are the other 2? As notorious as the Chautauqua Five is around those parts, Lorene suspects that people are scared to talk about them and what they may possibly know. David Pennington, who was 56, was implicated, and 61-year-old Phil Welch was described as the, quote, mastermind behind the arson, kidnappings, and murders. Busick would be the only man to serve time for the heinous crimes. Pennington died in 2015 and Welch died in 2007. So this was the first major break in the case in years. Stansel combed through all of the case files, which led him to the same insurance verification card that was discovered 1 or 2 days after the fire, and the investigation would lead them from Welch to Pitcher to Chautauqua, then back to Welch. Now, the only place that Mandy and I did not visit was Chautauqua. On January 3rd, 2000, OSBI agent Steve Nutter interviewed the woman whose name was on the insurance verification card. She just happened to be Welch's ex-girlfriend. On January 9th, 2011, another one of Welch's girlfriends, whose name isn't revealed in the affidavit, reported that Welch cooked methamphetamine and was often associated with David Pennington and Ronnie Busick. While living together, the woman overheard conversations between Welch, Pennington, and Busick about the people who were, quote, killed in Welch, Oklahoma, end quote. During these conversations, it was stated that they, quote, had owed them money and had been murdered for that debt. They had taken the 2 girls that were missing from Welch with them and eventually killed them. Pennington and Busick indicated they had set the fire to the home of the murdered people, end quote. So even more horrific, the woman stated she had seen some Polaroid photographs of the 2 girls, and that it was clear in the photographs that they were not being held willingly. A bedspread seen in the photographs were also identified as one belonging to Phil Welch. Oddly enough, for the longest time, there are claims that a missing poster of Ashley Freeman and Lorene Bible had been hung on the wall in Welch's house in Pitcher for a while. And this is not atypical because, well, we're not going to say that this guy did or didn't, but if he did, there's also a photo of the who did it, like looking for this man's sketch of himself behind him in the Delphi murders. So we'll see what goes on there. But so this isn't really atypical. It's kind of narcissistic. But after the woman saw that poster in his home, she was certain that the girls in the Polaroids were in fact the same girls on the poster. And until 2016, Stansel didn't actually receive any additional information or leads about Welch or Pennington or Busick. And it was at that time that Stansel interviewed one of Pennington's ex-girlfriends. And that's when the woman told investigators that Pennington had threatened her and said that she would be thrown into the pit with the girls if she told anyone what she knew. So there was another witness interviewed in 2017 who told investigators that Busick, quote, started running his mouth, end quote, about his involvement in the Freeman murders, as well as the kidnappings of Ashley and Laura. And Busick had also told this witness that the girls had been kept alive for several days and that he hadn't shot the Freemans, but he stayed behind with Pennington and set the home on fire. And this witness named Welch as the shooter. So if you read through the affidavit, all of the witness stories name Phil Welch, David Pennington, and Ronnie Busick as the arsonists, kidnappers, and murderers. Yet it's not until 2017 that the last living member of the three was interrogated by Ferrari and Stansel. And it's still unknown who the other two people are if these three make up the bulk of the Chautauqua Five, or if they were involved in any way. According to the affidavit, Busick was interviewed 3 times, despite the plethora of evidence and statements against him. Busick still tried to maintain that he didn't know where the girls were. He did admit to hanging around Welch and Pennington, back in that day. And he also described Welch as, quote, cold-blooded and Pennington as, quote, sheepish. Although an arrest was made and the killers were identified, private investigator Tom Pryor told Stansel and Ferrari that after he discovered this insurance verification card, law enforcement hadn't taken possession of it. So, he and Joe Dugan tracked down the car that the insurance card belonged to, and it led them to a salvage yard. And with permission, they went through this vehicle. So, shortly after Pryor stated that he reported the vehicle and his findings to law enforcement, he was told that the vehicle had gone through too many hands to be processed for evidence. This is also why it's really important that if you find anything, you don't touch it. Or if you find something, you immediately turn it over to law enforcement without touching it, physical evidence-wise. Again, Pryor and Dugan had also interviewed Welch 2 weeks after the murders. Their investigation led them to believe Welch, Pennington, and Busick were involved in the murders and the kidnappings of the girl then, only 2 weeks after this had initially happened. So in the affidavit, Pryor does admit that he stopped investigating the Freeman case after being told. There came a point where he was told by law enforcement personnel that he was interfering with an investigation, and they actually threatened to take his private investigator's license if he didn't cease his own investigation. And so he stopped investigating. Now, Stansel and Ferrari also learned that after Joe Dugan had died in May 2009, one of his relatives had actually taken his box of investigative material, a bunch of stuff pertaining to the case, and took that to the Craig County Sheriff's Office and turned it in. The affidavit states that the Sheriff's Office actually refused to take the material. And I don't know if they were the ones who destroyed it or if the family destroyed it, but it was eventually destroyed. So there's no telling what kind of evidence might have been in there as well. So on April 23rd, 2018, Ronnie Busick was arrested and charged with the deaths of Lorene Bible and Ashley Freeman, Danny, and Kathy. In 2019, a jury trial was set to determine Busick's competency. He was found competent to stand trial in the murder of Danny and Kathy and the kidnapping and presumed deaths of Ashley and Laura. Once this was over, the jury deliberated for only 45 minutes. And in 2020, Busick entered a guilty plea where his sentence was dependent upon leading investigators to the bodies of the missing girls. He was given a 10-year prison sentence and 5 years probation for his involvement. He is also receiving credit from time served since his April 2018 arrest. He still claims to this day that he didn't have anything to do with the murder of the Freemans or the kidnapping or the torture or the presumed eventual deaths of the girls. He still hasn't given any locations of where they could possibly be found.
Lorene is my aunt by marriage, but we are literally the same person. We're very in control. And if you allow yourself to break, then that break is going to be hard to recover from. Yeah. So you don't. You push, and you keep going. It's just, and especially after we just came off a search, and I know that I'm a different person in those few days after, and I will be a different person tomorrow because we've sat here and talked tonight. And it's not intentional.
It's your coping.
But that's how I cope with it because I never knew any other way.
Yeah.
You know, you had to be strong. You had to push through. You had to do this. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I am.
I think that is an Oklahoma woman thing.
I think it is. And crying is a sign of weakness.
Yes.
You don't cry. That was very hard for Jax when she first was talking to us. And like, I hate to cry. Mm-hmm. Even when I talk about the dreams and I get choked up, I'm like, ugh, don't do that. That's something that people have said about Lorene is she's so hard. There was a time, though, that people were saying things. Why doesn't she ever cry? It's amazing what you hear in Walmart when you're walking down an aisle and people don't know you're on the other side. Mm-hmm. When they had brought Ronnie Busick, well, it was right before they brought him down. It was when they had called us all in. They had arrested him. You know, we had this huge day and all the stuff was going on. Her and I walked aside and I said, I'm going to ask you to do something today. And she's like, what? And I said, you're going to have to show some emotion. She's like, hell no. And I'm like, you have to.
It's hard.
You don't understand.
Because that's also part of that control.
It is. And I said, I'm not telling you that you have to break down and cry because has she cried before? Yes, she has. I've seen it. But she will not let anyone else see it.
That's her. That's how she grieves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm the same way. But I told her that day, I'm like, you cannot be so stiff and so stoic that people think you're heartless.
Yeah.
There's so much talk about it. And she's like, kind of giving me the eye roll, looking at me like, whatever, daughter, you know. And she did, you know, kind of break during the interview. And then later she said, was that good enough for you? And I'm like, thank you. Like, smart aleck, you know, but she had to put back on that, okay, like, let's get back to business now, you know. Yeah. I mean, we do have a definite unique relationship, for sure.
So do you think they got the right guy?
Oh, I think he knows a lot. I think he says he doesn't know. He may not know where the girls were actually buried at.
Yeah.
But he knows the scenario, what was happening. He knows that.
Yeah.
He when I saw him after they extradited him back from Kansas, because they let me see him. Said, I ain't here to be mean to you. I'm not here to tell you anything. That's my child. I need to find her body so I can take her somewhere other than over there where that trailer was. And this is a memorial site where all the bad crap happened to them. I said, I need a place that we can put them, that can be their
rest their soul,
for their resting place, and have a memorial that's not overshadowed by all the bad. And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, do you have a child? Do you have a kid? which I already knew he did. And he said, yeah. I said, how old is she? He said, well, she died when she was an infant.
Oh.
I said, okay. Do you know where she's at? He said, she's in the cemetery. Do you know where the cemetery is? He said, yeah. I said, so you can go visit your child? Yes, no. I said, that's all I'm asking you. I want to go where to find the girls, take the bones, put them somewhere where I can go, other than up there at Pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, he said, I didn't kill anybody. I didn't set fire to you. And I didn't abduct anybody. I said, no, but you said and you allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
Did you go to the nearest police officer and tell him, hey, I saw this go down. Here's where those girls are at. He said, no. I said, well, then you've heard you're guilty by association. Yeah, my dad said one of these days the friends I run around with, I was going to pay hell for it one of these days. I was going to get in lots of trouble for it. I said, well, that day's today. You're being charged 4 counts of premeditated murder. Well, I didn't kill anybody. I didn't do it. And I don't think he actually knows where the girls' bodies are. He just heard talk.
Yeah.
That they could be in a root cellar or a cellar or a mine shaft. And when you're in that thing, talking to all the drug people I've talked to, when you're in it that long, you learn to keep your trap shut if you want to stay alive.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, well, one of these days, I mean, he got 10 years. He took the deal for 10 years. At his age and his medical condition,
Yeah.
he'll either die in prison or he won't last long when he comes out. But I said, when he does get out, when he walks out of that prison, I'm going to be standing there. You're going to look around every day and wonder if I'm behind you.
Mm-hmm.
I will guarantee you that, buddy.
I mean, of course, it would have been helpful to have the other two to kind of piece things together and go, okay, well, he thinks that they're here and he thinks that they're here. And so we can at least triangulate.
Oh, I bet you
something.
Welch probably had a pretty good idea.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think if anyone knew, it was Phil Welch.
He could probably take you, maybe not to the exact point because of memory and drugs and
Yeah.
years, but pretty close. Because
Pretty close,
you have to
yeah.
remember, he lived there part-time.
Yeah.
So he knew the area very well. And I don't think Busick did.
And here's the complete opposite end of the spectrum for me, because I like to be optimistic. There is always the chance that those girls are still alive somewhere.
I would love to think that at any moment those girls are going to walk in Lorene's house.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, they're going to be grown women. And she's going to get to see them again. But unfortunately,
The odds
are probably pretty slim.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's the thing that I've always mentioned. Yes, people are kidnapped. People are taken. People are kept hostage. I mean, we've seen women kept hostage before and then let go. But we're talking about from 1999 to 2022. It's just more about wanting Lorene to have...
We say closure, but there's no such thing as closure.
No, when something violent happens to your child or, you know,
There's
anyone of
just-
your family,
There's
you
no
cannot.
such thing as closure.
But to
ever.
have a knowing where those girls are and to put those girls in a proper burial.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
Yes. And, you know, could you imagine? I'd want to know.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I would be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd want to know.
And it's not always been easy for my kids because they would want to go. I think when they were younger, before they really understood, they would want to go. And I would be like, no, we're not going to do that. I don't know their parents. I don't know their family. Like, I don't know anything. And then once they started learning and understanding, they were good with it. But oddly enough, I had a lot of parents that would be really angry with me. You don't trust me? You won't let your kids come to my house? And so my kids would hear the backlash from other kids. Well, your mom's weird, and your mom won't let you do this, so that makes you weird.
Oh my gosh.
So my kids went through a lot, and my daughter still has went through a lot of stuff because of how I have done things. And I mean, I had one mom that just called me and said, you're not doing her any favors. You're making kids not want to be around her because you don't let her do anything.
all the time.
Yeah,
'Cause I
even
was
my
like that
daughter's
too.
dance teacher said to me one time, "You're going to have to chill out. You got to stop hovering so much." And I'm like, until you've walked in my shoes,
Yes.
you can't tell me
Yes.
not to hover. I just don't feel like we can be too safe,
Yeah.
you know?
No, you-
And I think this event not only changed our lives, I think it changed society, anybody in this area. For the most part, everybody started raising their kids. And we never locked our doors. Yeah, and it really did kind of change everything, you know? I mean, like my
Yes.
children never knew Laura.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter, I was 28 before I had my daughter. Laura had been gone for, 6 years before my daughter was even born. But the effects of what's happened to her has shaped my daughter's life, and it will shape the lives of her children someday too. And oddly, she didn't want to know anything. Really up until the last year. We would have camera crews in the house a lot and things going on, and my kids would just be like, blinded to it. They didn't want to know it. They didn't want to see it.
Yeah.
And I really had kept that part of my life separate, even from my husband. The husband that I was married to when Laura was taken, we divorced 6 years after we were married, and I remarried. And so my husband now is a police officer, wasn't a part of any of this, thankfully. But I kept it very separate because he wasn't there when this happened, and it's very hard for me to let people in to that. He says that I get in these modes whenever we have things going on with the girls, and he knows to just stay away. And I think that I probably do get this totally different persona about me that I don't realize that I am, but it's like I have to switch gears. And if there's one thing that we've had to learn, it's patience. Has it been easy? No, but we don't have a choice. Nothing happens fast. The hands do not turn fast, and you have to wait for them.
Unfortunately.
You have to wait. I mean, the 2 years that it took to get Ronnie Busick behind bars was excruciating. Going to court over and over and over for it to be continued was horrible. But we knew going into it, it wasn't going to be open and shut. We knew it wasn't going to happen fast.
Yeah.
And unless you've ever had to walk in any type of thing like this, you don't understand how it works. Is it unfair? Yeah, it is. Should we have had to go for 2 years back and forth to court every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, whatever? No, but we did.
Yeah.
And being mad about it doesn't change a thing. It's not going to make time go any faster. Someday when Lorene isn't here, I will still be here. And without her, I will still fight this fight if we have to.
Yeah.
I hope we don't. I hope that it's over. I hope that before my aunt dies, she gets that piece of being able to put her daughter in her final resting place. But then there's that other side of me that also I'm a very firm believer. And I think if something were to happen to her, she'll know.
Yeah.
You know, she'll be with her daughter again. They'll be reunited. And none of this will matter anymore.
Yeah.
But until then, we fight.
Yeah.
And if we don't have that answer when she's gone, I need that answer. And I think now it's passed on to my own daughter. If I'm gone, Laura will still be remembered. We don't want her to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And we don't want her to always be remembered as the victim, because she was
That's exactly.
an incredible human.
Yes.
Long before she was a victim.
Yeah.
But unfortunately now she's been a victim longer than she was just the girl next door.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you know, I took this weird little class about missing persons and the grieving process. And it was basically like, you know, you have these triggers that people don't think about. Like, it's another birthday without them. It's another Christmas without. And we've even heard Lorene say on several occasions, like, she didn't even take the Christmas tree down for like years and years and years and years and years, because that was Laura's favorite time of year. She was the
Christmas
one.
with them.
It was the last Christmas. She was the one that put the Christmas tree up, and that's a way of grieving. And nobody can tell you how to grieve.
No, it's that's symbolic to her, that Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And that makes her feel like Laura's still right there with her. And so however you grieve, you grieve.
Yeah.
And however you get through something, you get through something. Now, I know that this brings up a whole other ball of wax, but people, can get off on unhealthy things and, drinking, drugs, things. But just the grieving itself without bringing all these other things into it, how you grieve is how you grieve. I mean, that's just, it's okay.
Whether you cry or you don't cry.
So if you don't cry right away, do not think something is wrong with you grieving, because it's not.
Yeah.
Because in fact, I kind of grieve that way. I'm very, very quiet, and then it's later when it hits me, because I go into this, I got to take care of the situation mode. Even if it's not my job to take care of it, I have to think I have to be the quiet, still, the one that charges on, and then later on, after everything's over, is when it hits me.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like, it's like, put it out of your mind until, you've dealt with everything you need to deal with. You've dealt with the funeral. You've dealt with, all of these things. And then later, it's like the most unexpected thing that finally gets at you, and you just let it all out. And I know that is what's most important to her now, is just finding them and bringing them home and putting them where she can, as she says, can at least visit.
Yes.
So, and she goes out there to that memorial all the time. But she wants to know that that's where her daughter is. Like, that person was a part of your body. You made it with your own body. You want to know where the rest of your body is.
Oh yeah. I mean, it is amazing, because you think about that, and giving birth to a child is just the most closest thing you can ever be to another person.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure you know where that person is the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I mean, because it is an extension of you.
Yeah.
Our kids are an extension of us. They
Absolutely.
really are. They're part of our DNA.
Yep, absolutely. So, salute. We salute you, Lorene.
Yes. And we will advocate and help you in any way we can.
Any
Please
way
know
we
that.
can.
We're always with you.
Absolutely.
We want nothing more than to find the girls and give them a final resting place. But then what will we do when that mission is accomplished?
Yeah.
Because this has been our way of life
been such
for
a
so
long
long.
mission. Yeah.
We've kind of talked about what kind of laws could be put in effect.
Yeah.
What direction could we go to change some things? I don't want another family to suffer what ours has suffered. I need to make things better for someone else, because no one made it better for us. I feel like our case is, you could teach a whole course on what not to do in every single aspect, from the very minute up until 2016. I mean, we went for 16 years that we had nothing.
This case is very close to our hearts. All cases are every case is important.
Yeah. But there are some that stick with you that you cannot get out of your mind.
And you get close to them.
Yeah.
And I wish we could get close to every case, because we would. But, unfortunately, that is not possible to be able to go and interview, because some cases people aren't alive anymore, or there's not really, and so when we do get a chance, we do.
Yeah.
And thank you for taking this journey with us and allowing us to tell this story. It's important that these girls are remembered.
Yeah.
And they're thought of. And, it just takes one person. Just one.
Yeah.
So if you know someone or anyone that might have any information, please reach out. Well, this is not just about giving out entertainment. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
It's about telling a story and helping to advocate for two girls that cannot advocate for themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And so, it's important to get these stories out there, and it brings prevention.
Yeah.
It helps bring prevention and advocacy, because without knowing these stories and without really seeing, listening for yourself from the survivors and the authors that dug deep into these stories, you don't know how to put preventions out there to, for safety and for, things that you can do in the future to help keep safe.
It's about learning from the past. It's about advocating for people, and it's about building a better future for people.
Yeah, Raven has worked so hard and done so much. I mean, she works endlessly for these cases and for these victims and victims' families, and just puts in so much time and effort, and I salute her too.
I'm constantly going, but I'm constantly trying as best I can.
You're amazing, and I know I speak for myself and everybody else that's ever worked with you and the listening community. I'm sure you guys can agree with me that we're very thankful. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's a lot. I think for many years, I would have nightmares about things happening to her. But then somewhere at some point, the last bad dream that I had, I dreamt that it was her wedding day. And she was walking down the aisle, and when her dad lifted her veil, there was no face. And that was probably the last bad one that I had. And then after that, when I would dream about her, it's like she was telling me she was okay. So that's helped. There's been times that I have just dreamt that we're just sitting by Grandpa's barn, just talking. One that I had not that long ago, I had my phone, and she said, "What is that thing?" Cell phones were just coming out.
Right, yeah.
And she said, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's my phone."
Yeah.
Like, "What do you mean, what is that?" And she's like, "Well, what's it do?" So I was showing her how a cell phone worked. For the longest time, I kept having this reoccurring dream where she was like running ahead and showing me where she was. And then I finally figured out that at some point I had watched The Shack. And the things that I was seeing in the dream,
Okay.
and where she was running to,
Yeah.
it were in relation to that movie. But it took me a long time to think, you know what? I know where this is coming from.
Yeah.
And it'd probably been 2 years before that I had seen that movie. When I started having the dreams of like things of her, she'd say, "I like your shoes. I want to wear your shoes." Those kinds of things. And what is the cell phone? I want to see the cell phone. And one time in my dream, she just said, "Thanks for always being with Mom. Those make the next day possible." There's been so many life events that you want to rejoice in, but there's always that missing piece. The day my daughter was born was the best day of my life. She should have been there, because she would have been there,
Yeah.
causing chaos, because that's who she was.
Immediate nickname. Go.
Right? Exactly. Because we were definitely that family. Things like, I think it was my 30th birthday, maybe. My aunt and another couple of my other aunts and Melissa, they showed up and like destroyed my yard and did things, you know.
My
and
gosh.
she would have been in the middle of that, They had to put the black signs out. And one other time, maybe like my 25th birthday or something, they came over and took a bar of soap and like wrote on my screen so that it was not going to come off my window screen.
No.
I've never thought about that.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's things that she would have done, or it would have been her idea to do those
Yeah, I
things.
was about to say, it sounds like she would have led the charge.
She would have, yeah. And oddly, she's going to be 40 her next birthday, and that's been in my mind a lot. Like, what would I be doing to her? Like, she's got it coming. She would have been 40, she'll be 40 in April. So those life moments that she's supposed to be a part of and isn't, it's hard. And thinking about what would have been her life moments that we've missed out on. Like, she should have went to cosmetology school, and she should have been the one cutting my hair, and doing the things. And my kids should have been being raised with her kids. And that was taken from us. That's unfair. Life's not fair.
In May of 2023, Ronnie Busick was released from prison. This was extremely disheartening for all of us. The sad part is that I had actually signed up for VineLink and got notified that he was going to be released through VineLink. We did not know at the time that no one had informed Lisa or Lorene or the family of VineLink. So they actually found out third, fourth, fifth hand that he was being released from prison. There was never really a very good reason given for him to be released from prison, especially seeing as how he was supposed to be serving, until he gave information about the location of the girls, and that was part of his deal, and that never happened. And then in May, he was released. We did get with the family and tried to get a protest together. I actually contacted my girl Abby at Fox 23. I got her to get a news crew down for his release, and we got Lorene on camera. Of course she was there. Of course she was there at the prison the day he was released, and at least got her interviewed then about her feelings about this, because he was actually kind of rushed out in the middle of the night. We were told that he was going to be released at a certain time on a certain day, and he had actually been released 6 hours prior to that, to us even showing up at the prison. And so later, we kind of found out that they snuck him out a back door and put him on a bus and sent him on his way. We learned later in 2023 that his health was deteriorating. We think that there's a possibility that they just simply didn't want to continue paying for his health bills while in prison, and so they released him. And we found out that at one point he was in a nursing home in Oklahoma City. And the saddest part is that now he is back in Chitopa, which is very close to Veneta. It's 20 minutes away from where he and other men committed these horrible crimes. And again, the family was not notified that he was living this close to them, is living this close to them. So stay safe out there. Make sure that you're always aware of your surroundings. And, if you find something out, make sure that you inform people, because you never know. The system has completely let this family down. They had no victim advocates. They had no one to tell them about resources and things that we thought were common knowledge to families like this. VineLink. They had never heard about it. And so now we check with every family we talk to if they're signed up for VineLink, and it's something that you can sign up for. You don't have to be a victim family member, but you can sign up for it and make sure that you get notified when people are released or moved around in prison. And so with that, I want to say with a heavy heart, that's it. He's walking around free. And it's very, very sad that this family has to continue to deal with these surprises and the fear and the grief for just years and years and years, 20-something years. And that is something that can never be rectified.
Erected close by are sentiments of hope and love and strength, which will have to suffice until a final resting place can be had for Laura and Ashley.
You've reached the end of our episode. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Join Raven next time on the Sirens Podcast.
Do we have an outro? That's our outro, isn't it?